Panera Bread founder Ron Shaich says all of this infighting has got to stop because, well, true to his company, it's all our bread. And last time he checked, it's all of our country. Good to have you back, Ron. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. Good to speak to you.
I do remember that vividly, and I remember, we were holding hands across the aisle and singing together. The singing, frankly, I could have done without. But in all seriousness, it was an unusually inspiring time, and we addressed and quickly addressed a lot of our security breaches and tried to get moving on them fast. People can criticize how we got about them, but we moved fast. So we have it in us to do that. We're not doing it today. What do you make of that?
Well, I remember just this afternoon thinking back to 11 years ago to 9/11 and how we felt and how we came together as a country. And I think for so many of the citizens that I talk to, the folks that I visit with across the country, they feel a deep frustration at the inability of the political class to solve problems. That's what they're there for. That's what we pay them for. And they essentially avoid solving the problems. They blame each other. And this is an unacceptable situation for us as a country, particularly when we're competing with nation states like China, who have strong and clear decisions.
When you think about it, Ron, what we were dealing with then and quickly acting on then was making sure something like this wouldn't be repeated. And there's knock on whatever, it hasn't, because of the actions that were taken by both Republicans and Democrats to move swiftly on things like Homeland Security and a lot of other, and many critics will say administrative stuff, but bottom line, a very quick response to this horrific tragedy. And yet, by comparison, spending, which seems like a minor comparison next to life and death matters, we can't get a handle on.
Yes, in some ways, I think we put ourselves at such great risk. We are so able to rise when there's a direct challenge, when we have somebody attacking us as Al-Qaeda did 11 years ago. But unfortunately, we allow ourselves, in the way in which we conduct our political affairs, to essentially potentially do far more damage in an indirect way, and it's us. And it's what we allow. And at some point, you got to imagine the folks of this country are going to stand up and say, enough. We're paying you for solutions. Solve the problems.
I think when I was out with you, I'm sorry, but when I was out with you in conventions, you said a lot of wise things through all the din and the noise of politicians. But one that stuck to me was this idea that we had some big problems that both Republicans and Democrats caused. The blame game is gone. Here's the reality. Let's deal with this right now. And we've shown that singular fortitude when everything hits the fan, be it a depression, be it a war, be it even a terrorist threat that was made very obvious 11 years ago today. But I think when it comes to sort of issues like the debt and whether we're going to get downgraded or whether we can afford the type of lifestyle we're living as a country, since it seems relatively, by comparison, intangible, no one gives a you-know-what. So I think that is a danger.
You and I both know, I think so many of your listeners know, that America understands what its core problem is. It's debt, it's energy, and it's education. And the question is,
then why do our politicians treat us like we're idiots?
Well, essentially because the system and the way it's built encourages that. We have a system that encourages people to come from the extremes. You cannot solve the problem when you have Republicans who say we are never going to raise taxes and Democrats who say we're never going to cut any programs. You have to come together in a way. And that's what, as business people, we're asked to do. And essentially, I would say, solve the problems. And I think we all know in our hearts what the answers to it are. You look at the debt, the answer to it ultimately is somewhere near Simpson Bowles. You look at energy, we have to stay committed to energy independence. We cannot keep kicking the can down the road. And then you talk about education. You can't operate in a world in which we don't have the top workforce.
No, you're right. No, you're right. You're right. And I look at you, Ron, I think you survived the whole Atkins craze. I think that alone is what says a lot of it. Because everyone was going to leave carbohydrates. You stood strong and said, no, my muffins, my bread is still fantastic. People galvanized you. You did not recognize so-called impossible headlines. I'm being facetious to make a point. You didn't hear the word no, can't, impossible, better not. You just didn't hear it. And we should be more.
But,
go ahead, finish that.
I'll say something. I've run a public company for over 20 years. And over those 20 years, I've seen increasingly, in so many ways, our whole society get more and more short-term. And nowhere more than in our political establishment. Essentially, everybody is focused on the next election and not focused on what our children and we are going to inherit, which are these terribly difficult problems that we refuse to solve.
Very well put. Ron, Sheikh, thank you very, very much. A lot of you emailing saying, well, why do you have Ed and the founder of Panera Bread addressing our nation's ills? Because he's right, because he's accurate, because he makes a lot of bread. Enough said. Meanwhile, maybe lawmakers need to